Trustee Gray.
Present.
Trustee Holtz. Present. Trustee Rogers. Present. Trustee Suisse. Present. Trustee Fazmino.
Present.
Trustee Durian.
Present.
And Mayor Yukich.
Present. Are there any amendments to the agenda? We will have a presentation. So if you please welcome Glen from the Heritage Corridor Business Alliance, who is here to provide an update of the Alliance accomplishments.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for the invitation of being able to speak with you tonight. We know you have a full agenda, so we will be trying to be as brief as possible. I'd like to introduce Mike Shackle. He is our current board president. So Mike is going to give you a little background on where we've come from, and then I'll jump back in.
Good evening, everybody. Like Glenn said, we'll try to be brief. We'll only try to be about 25 minutes to a half an hour.
30 minutes.
Nice to see a few familiar faces here. The HCBA has just celebrated our 1-year anniversary after merging Lamont and Homer area Chamber of Commerce together. We moved into our new offices at 416 Main Street in late spring 2019. With the merger, we needed more space, so we occupied what was a former Lamont police station next to the Village Hall. In that past year, we printed out a new community guide and a website that has helped to grow our membership to over 325 members in both communities. Our current board is comprised of 12 members, and our staff has 3 employees. Past year, we've enjoyed working with Mayor Yukich, the village staff, and fellow trustees, including being at numerous ribbon-cutting ceremonies, such as Honeycut Salon, Aldi, Code Ninja, Ichiban Ramen, Tavern in the Glen, Pizza Hut, and Heritage Park. I'm going to briefly turn it back over to Glenn, and he's going to talk about some of the accomplishments of the past year.
So, as Mike said, it's been an exciting year. We've really gotten after it, and some of the projects and events that are coming up, we thought that we should let everybody know. Like Mike said, last year we did do a new community guide with both communities, so that went over well. I know Jamie and I worked long and hard, so we're thinking this time around it should be a little bit easier because we have the template. So Mr. Mayor will be reaching out to you for a new message in the weeks and months ahead, so we'll stay tuned for that to be in here. We're also, I know you had talked as a board about our banner program. Our original intention after much discussion was to maybe go into the Heritage Park. We understand your concerns. So I think in talking to Jamie, our next target area would be 159th Street, now that it's complete. So I know I'll be working with village staff on that and the message. And we think, it's an exciting project. It not only does it help advertise the local business, it helps advertise the community, and then also our new brand, the Heritage Corridor Business Alliance. So that's been one of the challenges, is getting our name and our brand out to the community. So we're excited about that. We'll be working with staff in the weeks and months ahead on that. One of the events coming up tomorrow morning, coffee and conversations with the mayor and Senator John Curran at Blueberry Hill. So we hope that starts at 8 o'clock. We hope all can attend, and if you have any concerns or if you have any questions about what the chamber is doing or what you'd like to see us do, please come by tomorrow at the Blueberry Hill. Kind of a side note, in Lamont, our Chief Mark Mayton is holding a cannabis workshop at the Lamont Police Station on Tuesday, February 11th at 4 o'clock. This is for all our restaurant and bar owners. Now, we understand that, marijuana law was voted down in Homer Glen, but we're still getting questions from a lot of our restaurant bar owners on how to handle the situation. So Chief Mayton is more than happy to have all our owners and managers come and attend that workshop to answer any questions that they may have. We'll also be, the ACBA will be sponsoring a restaurant week in both communities, both Lamont and Homer Glen, to promote all our restaurants from March 1st to March 8th, so details to follow on that. We're also co-sponsoring with the Northwest Fire Department the United for Puerto Rico fundraiser. It's going to be held at Ruby Agave's on Saturday, March 7th. That fundraiser is to raise funds to help transport much-needed fire equipment down to the island of Puerto Rico. We all know they've been devastated by first the earthquakes and now the fires. So look for that on your calendar. We also we're holding our business expo at the Lamont Park District on Saturday, March 14th. That Saturday morning, we had a fair amount of Homer Glen businesses attend last year, so we're looking to reach out to the community more to get more Homer Glen businesses to come and exhibit at that. Mayor Yukic's State of the Village will be on Wednesday, April 15th at Taza's Restaurant. Mayor, we did lock in last night after the ribbon cutting. So that'll be at 4:30. And what we're thinking about doing this year, a little different twist, is moving it from a lunchtime presentation to an afternoon. We also would like to do a Best of Homer Glen Awards ceremony. I know in Lamont we've always done a separate awards night, and it's gone over really well. So we thought, let's introduce it to the Village of Homer Glen. It's a great feel-good event. So we thought instead of doing it as a standalone event, we would go after the mayor's speech and your update. I know you were fine with that, Mayor, so we're looking forward to that. Some more details to follow. We have a golf outing. We'd love for you to participate. I know we're in the dead of winter, but we have a golf outing on Thursday, June 25th at Ruffle Feathers Golf Course. And again, to kind of go along with us trying to brand ourselves more and more out in Homer Glen, we're looking to participate in Homer Fest in any way that we can. I know I've talked to staff and have raised our hand to say whatever we can do as the chamber to help drive the event. We're all for that, whether it's bartending, whether it's manning booths. We're here for that. And I think the general takeaway tonight is just thank you for the assistance and the warm welcome that you've given the new organization over this past year. We've had a few bumps, but we've worked through them, and we're really excited. And I love the idea of promoting both communities with each other. So we're excited. We think there's a lot of good projects ahead. And on that note, I'll turn it over to our board president.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to fill the next 25 minutes, but I'll give it a shot. No, I'll just conclude by saying this. We're here to help drive, attract, and retain businesses in both Homer and Lamont. And in a way, drive business between the communities to the different businesses in both communities. Really looking, again, we thank you for your support. We're looking to develop even a closer relationship, and look forward to your input and your help in doing so. A thriving business community, helps in a couple different ways, as you guys know. It helps obviously with your tax base. It helps drive revenue for the programs and services that you guys offer. But what it also does is, I think a thriving business community helps promote and attract residents to your community. So again, we thank you for your support, and we're looking really to build this relationship into a real close one. Again, have a great night, and thanks again.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Glenn. And thank you for all your help and your enthusiasm. Thank you. Okay. I need an approval. I need a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th, 2020 village board meeting.
So moved.
Trustee Suisse.
Second.
Trustee Gray. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Reports and communications from the mayor and other officers. Tomorrow morning, we have State Senator John F. Curran, and I invite you and your friends to join us for a casual conversation over coffee. Come share your thoughts on the community and legislative matters important to you. It will take place tomorrow morning, January 23rd at 8 a.m. to 9:15 at Blueberry Hill Breakfast Cafe, located at 14355 South Bell Road in Homer Glen. So again, it starts at 8 and ends at 9:15. Senator Curran will be there, and I'll be there to answer any questions that we do have. Trustee Suisse.
No report this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Pedro.
Thank you, Mayor. reporting for the Parks and Recreation Committee. Although we had a very merry and successful Homer for the Holidays event, the committee discussed several areas of improvement, including better heating, additional tent space, and inclusion of risers or a stage area for the event presenters and entertainment. This is a work in progress, and I'm sure the end result will be an even more spectacular event next year. Under new events, we are working on a Bike Homer event, which will highlight our Heroes Trail System, local businesses, and parks on May 3rd. The proposed event will be similar to a scavenger hunt with punch cards and passports, which will be validated for special discounts, goods, and services. This is currently a work in progress and will be providing more details in coming weeks. We also discussed the possibility of formalizing a policy which would allow rentals and special events at village parks. This is still in its infancy stages, and village staff will work with Parks Committee, Building Department, and Public Safety Committee, as well as research the policies of neighboring villages. We'll keep everybody dialed in, and Mayor, that concludes my report.
Trustee? Trustee Rogers? Thank you. Trustee Varian? No report, Mayor. Thank you. Trustee Holtz?
No report.
Thank you. Trustee Gray?
Thank you, Mayor. Just reporting on behalf of the Homerfest Committee, we had another meeting last night. We continue to plan, and things are coming along well. We're still talking about having it in the same spot we were last year, based on feedback when we talked tonight about the next phase of Heritage Park. But I did want to mention that the HCPA, which just gave us that wonderful presentation, their golf outing is on the very first day of Homerfest, so we'll be testing out everyone's allegiances here. No, that shouldn't be a conflict there. It'll be during the day, and we have our fireworks scheduled for that night, so hopefully those two items can dovetail very well, and maybe we can even use the HCPA as they reach out for the golf event to remind people about the great event that will be taking place right here behind Village Hall. So with that, residents are encouraged to visit homerfest.com and see the dates set for June 25th to the 28th. And all of the bands are starting to come together, and they're slowly making their way onto that website. So any more information they need, they can go to homerfest.com. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. What day do you plan on having the special meetings?
Right.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Village Clerk?
I just have a quick report, Mayor. Just to follow up on the business registrations, we have 526 total businesses in the village of Homer Glen. 305 of them are commercial-based businesses, and 221 of them are home businesses. Currently, to date, we have 77 of the commercial brick and mortar businesses that have not paid at this time, and 70 of the home businesses that have not paid at this time. So we have a total of 147 businesses that are late, but they still have to the end of January to do so. On the good side, we are 85 fees ahead of last year so far. So going in the right direction. Hopefully we can get them all paid on time.
Thank you. We'll send a letter out to them on the 30th.
We have called every business that, I shouldn't say myself, but the team, the staff has called every business, and if we were unable to speak to them on the telephone, we had followed up with an email.
Okay, thank you. Village Attorney?
No report, Colonel.
Thank you. Public Safety Official?
Yes, sir. Just real quick. Just want to remind the public that with the snow coming this weekend, that there is an ordinance when there's 2 inches of snowfall or more to have your vehicles off of the streets. We do that, we don't want to write ordinance tickets, but for the highway department to have safe passage down these streets, we don't want cars blocking the way, number one. Also, people want their streets cleared, and it's much easier when the vehicles aren't in the way. And especially for emergency vehicles to get through, we need those cars off of the street. Just a reminder to residents too, as I drive around the village, I see a lot of people when it's raining or snowing don't have their headlights on. Just a reminder that there's an Illinois law that requires you to have headlights on whenever your windshield wipers are on. So rain, snow, have those headlights on, and especially, we've had some foggy days. I couldn't believe the amount of cars driving through the soupy weather that did not have their headlights on. So just a reminder, and I think a lot of people forget because so many people's cars have automatic headlights. So it's just something to look and see, make sure they're on. And again, we don't want to have to write tickets for that. I'm saying this to prevent accidents, number one, and for your safety. We want the safety of the public above everything. And I know I'm beating a dead horse here. Lock your vehicles. When they're home, lock your cars. Don't leave your keys in the car, don't leave your fobs in the car, don't leave any valuables in the car. Don't leave your car running. If you're getting ready for work and you're leaving the car run outside, be in the car, okay? Again, we're not seeing people slim jim indoors, they're getting into unlocked vehicles, okay? And the last thing, don't be afraid to call the sheriff's department. The public, we have to work with you to prevent crime. You see anything suspicious, please don't hesitate to call us. We want to be bothered. Call us, okay? And that's my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Village manager.
No report.
Next will be public comment. If you could keep it to 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. Shackle, are you, Mike, would you, are they gone? They're gone, okay. Fred Marino?
Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Fred Marino, and I've been a resident of Homer Glen since 1988. I am married to my wonderful wife, Cindy, and I have a 22-year-old son, Christopher, who is fortunate enough to grow up in a safe and thriving community such as ours, and attend some of what I believe are the finest schools in the state of Illinois. In my professional career, I wore many hats, in which I was a former teacher, counselor, dean of student discipline, and assistant principal of Thornridge High School. In addition to those duties, for many years I also served as a head wrestling coach and assistant football coach. I merely mention my background not to attach any status to what I did professionally, but rather to serve as a reference point to my life's experiences, which I'm hopeful will lend credence to what I'm about to say. My purpose for coming tonight is primarily for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is to offer the village board my sincere congratulations and gratitude for your courageous and thoughtful decision to opt out of the sale of recreational marijuana within the village of Homer Glen. As board members, you have a tougher job than most people realize, and I know it can also be a thankless job as well. So I'm sure you appreciate sincere compliments whenever they come your way. My other purpose in addressing the board tonight is not only to offer you a compliment, but more importantly to extend a challenge to you as you move forward in your government's role in the days, weeks, and years ahead. It is a challenge that I'm praying you will give your most serious consideration to, because I firmly believe it may be the most important decision you'll ever make regarding the community you faithfully serve. I have to admit that when the passing of legislation legalizing the sale of marijuana in the state of Illinois, I was both bewildered and devastated, but certainly not surprised, having been no stranger to the long history of corruption and incompetence in Illinois politics. This, of course, has been in the works for quite some time, waiting for just the right moment to rear its ugly head and, in my view, take advantage of a culture severely in decline. I've always considered myself to be a positive individual, but ashamedly I find myself believing more and more in the old adage offered by some political pundits that the 3 most profound words in the English language used to describe the behavior of politicians is follow the money. It appears that one of the weakest springs of the human condition is the ease in which we rationalize away our most fervently held ideals in the guise of doing the greater good. And so it is with the legalization and sale of marijuana. It is both laughable and sad to hear the defense offered up by politicians in other communities who have jumped on the proverbial bandwagon and gave their approval to allow the sale of marijuana within its jurisdiction. Statements like, if we don't do it, the community next door to us will, and then they will reap all of the revenue that could be ours. Or how about, hey, it's legal now, so if they don't get it from us, they'll just get it somewhere else. Still another rationalization often espoused is, don't sound so self-righteous. We're just supplying the public with what they already want. Do any of these statements sound familiar? They should. The irony is, the same defense has been used by drug dealers for many years. Boy, how things have changed. Still in the darkness, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Just prior to your board making a final determination on this issue, I was reading a local newspaper article, and I was quite encouraged by Orland Park's reasoning for opting out. A spokesperson for the board simply stated that when they weighed the pros and cons, it was clearly evident that in good conscience they could not reconcile the revenue this endeavor would generate versus the negative impact that it would have on the community as a whole. Unfortunately, neither time nor circumstance will allow us the opportunity to fully engage in the type of debate this critical topic deserves. It is, however, the proper time and place to bring to light a very sobering fact that seldom gets the attention it truly deserves. I'm talking about the human cost in terms of the destructive effect that marijuana has had on all of our communities and the family unit at large, and most profoundly on America's youth. I can tell you unequivocally.
Excuse me, Mr. Marino, you've exceeded your 3 minutes. Can you try to wrap it up?
Okay, I'll do my very best. I can tell you unequivocally that as a lifelong educator and strong advocate for the welfare character of our children, no other factor that I've ever experienced has had a greater debilitating effect on the individual character than marijuana. It has reached such devastating proportions that I don't believe that there's a single individual in this room or family in America today that isn't either affected directly or indirectly by the scourge of drugs, which marijuana is a key contributor. In closing, and I know you're happy to hear that, I want to thank the board for allowing me the opportunity to share the perspective I presented tonight. I'd like to leave you with one additional thought. For years, my son and I have had many laughs over his accusation that when growing up, I would covertly use every opportunity I could possibly manufacture as a teachable moment out of whatever activity or circumstance we found ourselves in at the time, especially if we were watching a movie. And you know he was right. So as not to make my son a liar and stay consistent with my true nature, I'm going to share one teachable moment with you in closing. For you movie buffs, you may recall that a few years back, a blockbuster movie called The Karate Kid was released. You may also remember that at one point in the story, the Karate Kid known as Daniel was being harassed by local ruffians and was so enraged that he was about to make a very bad decision. Fortunately for him, his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, was able to dissuade Daniel with a simple but profound piece of advice, simply telling him to never choose passion over principle, because even if you win, you lose. I think there's a message in this advice for this board and all of us. Because this challenge and this issue will come up again and again and again with the intent of both enticing and wearing down those who remain in opposition to the sale of marijuana in our community. So let us always remember that in our passion to do what we perceive to be a good thing, we must never forget to hold the human cost at a higher standard of consideration than the quest for achieving or acquiring revenue as a misguided means of doing the common good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marino. Next would be Sengoris Kamiskas.
Good evening, everyone. Four questions about emails that I sent to all trustees about my complaints, and I never received any answers. I'm asking village board members again for a meeting with some persons who can make decisions, who is making decisions, and a meeting with the mayor and a lawyer, my lawyer together, the village staff members, to come back to the same problem. In that case, we have like a village, some staff village members saying it's closed because information and documents shows a different zoning and use for property. And again, I would like to know 2019, I didn't get any answers. I would like to get like equal rights to response to my complaints, and be respected my human rights like a person and citizen of the United States.
Well, the village is right now. They are giving you your rights. You have a civil matter right now. It's out of our hands, and we cannot help you with it. You've got to go through the civil limit first and see what happens there.
I'm sorry?
You're in court right now. You have
With
two of you trying to buy the same building.
No, it's in next my like what do you want to say, because I never had the time like to say about my position and situation. And like last email I got like from a village manager and asking the village to please do not mix my like a disputes with the landlord and like ordinance zoning and the use of the property. 15761 Nico Drive, home, Glen, Illinois. It's two different stories, and they never mention it about anybody disputes or something or problems with the landlord. We're talking about the zoning, ordinance, and property use, and answering to complaints and response from the village in the complaints. Equally, like to everybody.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to have Eric respond to this. You have retained attorneys. We have received letters from their attorneys concerning the position of the zoning of the adjacent neighbor. And we have asked our village attorney, who recently sent a letter to your attorney as well as to you, basically indicating the village's position hasn't changed from the existing use of your adjacent neighbor. So Eric, if you could just provide just like a very short.
I'm not talking about any neighbors. Do not mix neighbors, landlords. We're talking about like a property.
Could you please share with the board, Eric, the village's position as relates to the existing zoning in that area?
Sure. The complaints that are being raised do not take into account that the zoning and the use of this property that occurred back in the 70s, before the Homer Glen was even incorporated. So the village has taken the approach of, these are grandfathered, we're not going to shut down somebody's business, and we're not going to take an approach that's against somebody's business when there's a dispute going on between these individuals, because of the fact that the zoning, this trucking use and things of that nature have been going on since well before the incorporation. As the village manager indicated, I put this in writing, sent it to their attorney. I also explained that if there are new complaints that come up that are different from things that have been already addressed and looked into, the village would look at that, just like they do for any other complaints that are raised by the public. But to go over the same issues, we know where you and your attorney, and your attorneys, I should say, where you believe the zoning, your position on the matter.
I'm sorry.
We understand your position.
No,
We don't necessarily agree with it, and I put this in writing to your attorney as well. And that's where I'm saying, when we say this matter's closed, because we've looked into it, and we disagree that they're in violation of the zoning. I think it's quite as simple as that.
What's about you like saying on a September 5th meeting like zoning was industrial? It never was industrial. Because by your decision, land commissioners made a decision about this like voting, by you telling like everybody's like it was zoned industrial. Where did you find that information about industrial zoning?
Well, first of all, let me explain, this is public comment. Yeah. This isn't a dialogue back and forth. I'm simply addressing, you made a comment about that you don't feel that you're being treated fairly, and there are zoning violations. I'm simply stating, we put all this in a letter, sent it over to your attorney, explaining our position. And other than that, I'm not sure, we're not going to engage in a dialogue anymore. You can make your comments, you can ask some questions. But at this point, I mean, we're not going to go deep.
I didn't finish asking questions, and you interrupted me. I just want to have like a meeting, And like, gave response to my new complaints. It was like, done like a week or 2 weeks ago about a parking in front of a building, about the people living in the east side of the building. One person in a shop, another two person in not approved second floor, not approved for occupancy. Twice people still live over there, and no one is taking response, and no one is taking care of it.
Again, I don't want to engage in a back and forth with you at a public board meeting. That's not the intent of village comment. However, I can respond briefly because I have been in receipt of my staff's emails where they did respond to you. They did go out. They did investigate it. Casey, our property maintenance inspector, replied back to you what the results of that with the parking. And your concern is that your lease does not allow your adjacent neighbor, your business, to park in those parking spaces, and we don't enforce private leases. So we did address it. We responded back in writing to you. So for you to stand up here and say that we didn't, it's not an accurate statement. In addition to the concerns you have about someone living in the unit upstairs, we addressed that back in the fall and the summer. Mr. Baber did, and we are following up on it again to ensure that that's not the case. So you cannot stand there and say that we haven't responded to property maintenance complaints. We have, but we keep hearing the same things over and over again because you don't like the answer that you receive. That's not going to change the situation. It's still going to be the same answer.
It's same answer, it's no answer. Actually, I never received any emails from you like with explanation what was done and what kind of situation. Because right now, like, I'm confused which zoning is and how I can use that land in the future.
What you're gonna need to do is talk to your lawyer on it. We cannot be involved in it anymore. If there's something that happens at your place that you think we should send someone out to check it, we will be more than happy to do that. But other than that, we're done with this situation because they've sent out the letters explaining everything with you. Did you ever take time to talk to your lawyer? Did he give you time to listen to what we had told him?
I did receive like an email from Kerry Freeland answering from your lawyer,
Well,
village lawyer, and it doesn't look like a right answer, and it's no explanations, and because documents saying like a different zoning and different history of the use and zoning.
Again, we're going to have to agree to disagree because we're not going to change the village's interpretation of the existing zoning that's been in place, and the property has been used in that similar manner for many, many, many years. And even if we were going to agree with you, then we would have some there would be legal ramifications on the other side, where you're trying to put an active business out of place that's been in business and that property's been used for a trucking repair business for many, many years. We're not going to do that. So my point is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, my staff has responded to you on numerous occasions. I have been copied, I've received those communications, and the bottom line comes down is you don't agree with the answer. So I would recommend that we close public comment.
okay. No public comment's done right now because this isn't a public comment.
Public comments done, sorry.
Okay, I will admit.
Thank you. Next would be all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. Is there a motion to approve the following items? 1, the accounts payable for the period of January 10th, 2020 through January 23rd, 2020 in the amount of $140,343.40. And 2, the treasurer's report of cash and investments for the period ending December 31st, 2019.
So moved.
Holtz.
Second.
Gray. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Holtz? Aye. Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Suisse? Aye. Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Kuzmino? Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Legislation and action items. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 20-001, an ordinance amending the sign regulations, section 220-1005, chapter 220 zoning,
of the Code of the Village of Homer Glen, with case number HG 1925A, Village of Homer Glen.
I so move.
Trustee Suisse,
I second.
trustee Rogers, discussion.
I just wanted to say that the new packet that's on the dais, that's the one change that I had requested yesterday, on Monday, which was the inclusion of the flag language that we had talked about at our last outing on this, so that was why there was another copy sitting on the dais when we opened it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
I still don't agree with the digital signs. All right.
Oh, but that's what you're supposed to do. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Suisse? Aye. Trustee Barron?
Aye.
Trustee Kazmino?
No.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holz? No.
Okay, motion carries. Next, Jim Petrarcas of Tree Architecture is here to talk about Heritage Park schematic design and receive policy direction from the village board.
Second, I'll look up here. Okay, is everyone ready? Thanks, everyone. Just wanted to give everyone an update and kind of go through some things that the design team has talked about and put a presentation together for everyone's consideration. So one of the first things was we wanted to discuss how did we get this far in terms of the project. Just as a reminder for everyone, and even for the community, park planning projects, right? 2016, the village hired PRI, Planning Resources in Tria, to do a conceptual park plan. Again, doing a conceptual plan, most of that direction was community surveys and input. In 2018, the board hired Tria to do the master park plan, to develop that conceptual plan even further. At the same time, we did the active core project, and that the master park plan project. If everyone recalls, right, the direction that the board kind of gave us was we want a confirmation of the PRI's cost estimates, the ones that were existing, a logical breakdown of future areas and projects within Heritage Park. How can we group them to better serve the community and during construction? And then also the cost implications for completing one project a year, putting them in groups, or doing them all at once. So I know we presented a lot of those, and you'll still see some more of that. But essentially giving the board options on how to proceed. And then the last one, the last project that we're technically in is a 2019 Master Park Plan schematic design. So we took the Master Park Plan and developed it further, or portions of it further, so we can kind of really give the board some more detail as we're making decisions. Again, board direction, further development of the design and estimates for not every part of the park, but certain parts. We completed a board survey, which we'll touch on again, about the amphitheater style and the amenities. Again, talking about logical breakdown of future areas, projects, and then the cost implications, again, for how we can do certain projects, one project at a time, in groups, or all at once. In regards to meetings, again, just I'm not going to go through all these, but here's all the meetings that we did in the board level of public meetings that we had for the schematic design process for this. And then the other part on the bottom, you can see the schematic design team meetings, how many times we've met and so forth. So even in these public meetings, we kind of talked about the amphitheater / village green visual preference and priority survey that was distributed to the board. So board consensus so far, I think what we kind of all understand is the
team understanding, right, to move forward with the construction of the next phases in 2020 and 2021 based on the success of the active core and the special events that you've had so far. I think that's been a great success. Prioritizing the amphitheater / village green area was one of the prioritizations. Install swings in the active core was another priority. We also talked about there was a need for additional parking based on the success of special events. Again, the more popular your events become, more people are driving here and getting in, doing that just to accommodate that. Separate design services and construction management services for future phases of construction. Implementing no new taxes to fund Heritage Park development. No use of MFT funds for the Heritage Park to allow for use for other future infrastructure needs. Minimize disturbance of Heritage Park with efficient construction scheduling / phasing. I think that's been one of the driving factors to make sure we're not tearing up things over and over again. And then not moving forward with the fishing pond, splash pad, 151st Street parking lot expansion, or Public Works parking lot at this time. I'll leave it Carrie for you guys.
Yeah, so this slide is basically based upon the feedback that the village board members have provided to me and to staff from the last workshop we had on December 11th. So I do want to thank all of you for giving me that feedback, whether it was verbally, whether it was in writing, or otherwise, so that we could determine where there was consensus versus certain things and be able to move off those things and then continue to have conversations with where we go next, and knowing that we have consensus on these items. This is generally the consensus majority of the board said we agree on. So I was mining the data that I was receiving to say, okay, where is the majority on certain things? And then from there, we're going to talk about tonight on where we go from here, some additional options that we're going to present to you, as well as we've done some refining of the financing scenarios as well that we'll go through with you guys tonight as well. And we do want this to be an open, fluid workshop. We want you guys to ask questions. We want you guys to, if you feel like what we're conveying is not what you convey to us. Again, we took and we broke down where we could find common ground and go from there. But this should be a very open, collaborative process, because we really do want to get to the next step in this whole entire process as we're putting our budget together for the coming year, is to basically say, what phases does the board agree that we should proceed forward with to actually do the design and engineering, so that we have bid documents ready to go. And then we will continue to have conversations with the board to say, okay, when do you want to pull the trigger on the bidding? Is that fall? Is that next spring? On what phases do you want to pull those things on? And we can work in the financing and timing of those things as well. So those are just my initial comments as we start the workshop. Okay, so I'm back. All right, so we're going to hand this out because it's really hard to see on the screen. And so just to remind everyone from the last workshop on December 11th, basically what we did is we handed out a John Sawyer's put together the funding revenue Heritage Park funding options. You see at the top it says 12/11/2019. And basically everything that's on the left side of the page has not changed from December 11th workshop. So we wanted to show you what you guys had received that night and we discussed. And then we wanted to put together some basic scenarios that could be considered and discussed tonight collectively with the village board. A couple things to note. The boxes at the very bottom of this spreadsheet that I originally had in red, and Mr. Sawyer's told me red is bad, is now dark gray. And the reason that is dark gray is because the consensus of almost every single person on the board was that there was not a desire to implement a new tax to support future phases of construction of Heritage Park. So the reason we darked that out is because we want you to forget it's there. But we didn't want to remove it because we wanted you to see what you had already been provided, to be consistent in sharing the information. So then everything you have is to the right of the black line down the middle is basically some funding scenarios, and we'll discuss these as we talk about the additional phases of the project. And based upon the feedback that we have gotten, what individual trustees have said, you know, I'm really interested, I'd like to do these phases next. So what we've been working on, literally in the last 2 days, it was a little like herding cats a little bit, was to take that information we received and to say, okay, if we have consensus on these things, then it still leaves a number of phases that still have to be done and considered tonight by the board. And we wanted to show you, at least on the revenue side, and how you could accomplish those things if the board so chooses to move forward, so that we can get going on the design and engineering. So what you have to the right on the spreadsheet is under the original December 11, 2019 column, you basically have all Mr. Sawyer's information and just basically added some at the bottom. So based on the information that was shared back on December 11th, that information totals $9.7 million. And that was assuming that we do everything that we have up here. We used MFT funds, we used the park funds. It's basically everything that we have presented at the last workshop. Nothing has changed. The total of dollar funds available, if the board so chooses to go that, we're not recommending that, but if they chose to do that, you would have $9 million all in to proceed forward with construction. The second scenario, which is scenario number 1, is there's been some changes made, some assumptions made. So based on scenario number 1, if you wanted to move forward, and we're going to talk about the future phases in a second, so we got more slides. Scenario number 1, you can see there's nothing in there in the row that has $420,000 for MFT funds. So we took some of these things out based on feedback we had received from the board. I have collectively heard that there really is a strong desire to not use MFT funds because we can build that fund up over time and use it for other infrastructure needs in the village in the future. So that's one of the reasons you'll see in these scenarios that it's out now. So in addition, there was a lot of comments about taking the small park fund that's currently budgeted in the 2020 budget, $300,000, and reallocating it to the future phase of Heritage Park. So you'll see that in the future scenarios, we removed that as a possible financing option. And then as you go down that column, you'll be able to see what the total dollar amounts. So, and then as you get down to basically, one of the things that we had talked about at the last workshop was whether there was a desire of the village board to amend standard operating procedure number 2, which regulates, as you're aware, what the bond proceeds that we currently have sitting in the savings in the bank account could be used for. Right now, the SOP number 2 restricts it to 3 different uses. So the question became, is that something the board wanted to change as a policy decision? And so you can see in some of these scenarios is that you'll see that some of that money is being used in certain ones, some of it's only being used 50%, some of it's not being used at all, and some of it's just a flat fee. And we put these together to help the conversation tonight as part of the workshop, to show you guys the different scenarios of funding available and what the impact would be on these different funding sources. As we have the conversation on what phases do you really want to proceed forward with architectural engineering design work, where we will have bid specifications to go to bid at the direction of a future vote of the board. That's really what we're trying to figure out tonight. And I'm not going to let any of you leave until we get that answer. So hunker down. So instead of going through each one of the scenarios, you can see that basically the original proposal back in December 11 was at almost $10 million. And then you can see we go from $7.1 million all the way down to $5 million. The box one where you see scenario number 2 with the whatever you call that, the box around it, is the one that we thought would meet the most desired, would attain the desired outcome of the consensus of the board. You guys did not all agree on everything. You all had different phases you wanted to do, you had all different concerns you wanted to do, and what we tried to do is take those in and see how many of those we could fit within the budget based on the feedback we got from the village board. So that's why that scenario number 2 is boxed, because we believe that based on the feedback to date, and through all the public workshops we've had all the way through the last 2 months, that this scenario number 2 would accomplish the majority of the village board's desires based on that. So we can answer any questions if you have about the spreadsheet. I have Mr. Sawyers here to answer any questions about the funding sources. A couple things to note that I put down at the bottom here is, again, remember the dark gray area, forget about it. We're not proposing any new increases in taxes. That's not in any of the scenarios. Additionally, this does assume that we would have to complete this, whatever the next phases are selected by the board, that we would have to complete them between 2 calendar budget years. So that's good, important to remember. So there's some financial planning that John and I will have to do with the board on how that works, but it's manageable and we can do that. And the last thing I wanted to point out, it also does not include, right now, as you know, we began our FY21 budget. And we are anticipating, based upon Mr. Sawyer's excellent budgeting skills, that we are going to have a surplus of at least $500,000 that we will be able to sweep like you guys did last year. I think it was 700?
Yes.
700,000, if you remember, you swept last year, and you put that $700,000 in the parks fund to support the park. We right now, based on where we're at, it may be more, but we want to be conservative. We know that we will have $500,000, and it may be more than that, but we don't want to commit to more right now because we're still in the budget and we're still planning for next year. So I just want to make sure that $500,000 surplus sweep is not included in any of these numbers as well. Okay? So that's, I don't know, Charlie, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. My 3 minutes is up. Questions, comments about just the spreadsheet? What's in it? How it works? Okay. Jim?
So yeah, we just included, we received community feedback along the process, so we incorporated those in line with, with the consensus of the board and kind of the discussion of the design team, so we just wanted to touch on some of the feedback that we received.
So this was verbally as well as, thank you. This was verbally as well as some of the trustees received that, I think Trustee Holz, you received a spreadsheet. This is that a resident actually ranked the different projects based on their own priorities. So we received that information and received feedback from the Parks and Rec Committee members as well. So we just wanted to summarize that in this slide.
So this was an opportunity to kind of just really get the information that you had last time, right, from December 11th. If there was any board feedback from them, comments as we move forward, as we were talking about that before, we were talking about the design team's consensus.
Any questions, comments, anything?
My preference would not be to do 12-foot concrete pallets and stick with the asphalt that we have throughout the rest of the park. So I'm trying to understand where that direction came from and what the cost difference would be.
I can get that for you. The paths you're talking about on the Village Green, or so the Village Green was different than the bike paths. So there were bike paths throughout the park that were asphalt. That was the direction there. These were more the refined walking paths, the cars and farmers market and so forth, were making it more of a Village Green where it was a touch classier than a bike path, per se, an asphalt. So just making it more refined.
I had a last minute question to carry late this afternoon. I was wondering the square footage of the splash pad that was planned.
We got that. We forwarded it on to a landscape architect and they
You
were
don't have to.
time-wise, we just couldn't get it, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
I can ask the question. No, not at all. It's not my birthday, so I guess I can't. Can you point out the areas in the park that are already finished or planned for any special needs?
And our already finished would be, that's order of how they were completed, right? Obviously, Village Hall was first. The Ring Road, it goes all the way around the park, was completed second. And then at the same time, the 319 grant, this whole gray area, if you can see my mouse, as well as the fishing pond.
It doesn't show up on the.
Yeah, it doesn't show.
I can get that for you. Hold on, sorry. Oh, no.
Yeah.
All right. So Ring Road, this parking lot, the Ring Road was done first. And then the 319 grant with the fishing pond, so essentially this whole area along the border, east border, that whole gray area was essentially done. And at the same time, the byproduct of that 319 grant was the sled hill, the rough grading of the sled hill that's on there, as well as the active core was completed roughly at the same time. The active core still, we're closing that out. So all the spoils from there were also put on the sled hill. So those items are complete. We talked about, in order again, refining the sled hill from where it was, right? Touching that, so these cost estimates that we've seen and some of the schematic design was refining the sled hill, refining the Village Hall, the Veterans Memorial, the gateway in the front.
I don't think you heard your question, Kristen. Yeah, my question was, what part of the park is already completed that is geared towards adults or children with special needs?
Oh, well, the only one I can speak for is the active core, and that one is handicap accessible. We were planning on the swing set, or the actual swing set that is handicap accessible, but the active core itself, the entire active core is accessible. And we don't have any play structures per se that would bring them to be ADA accessible. The ninja course, by its being a ninja course, is not accessible. It's not accessible just because it is a ninja course. But all the other sports are accessible that are on it. Sorry. I went
And the
in a different
sensory
direction.
guard, though, the sensory guard, right, that's accessible too, right?
Yeah, the whole park. So if you were to go around bocce, or not the bocce, the bags game, horseshoes, sensory garden for sure, the nature play area is handicap accessible. All the other courts that are there, right, tennis, the pickleball, pavilion, that's handicap accessible, right? Center area, fitness area. Again, being handicap accessible or for special needs doesn't necessarily mean you're in a wheelchair, so anybody who's visually impaired or anything can still play bocce ball, you can still get on fitness equipment. You can still even do some of the items that are in the nature field.
I just wanted to state it because I received a numerous amount of emails and phone calls asking what part of the park would be accessible, so I just wanted to make it clear and have it stated. That's all.
Yeah, it's all for state law, we made law. State law.
Right, but I was thinking, the questions were more geared like what play equipment, and I saw that it said swing, but it didn't say ADA swing. They wanted more specifics, which.
Yeah, so there are no swings out there right now.
Right.
They're proposing a swing, and then part of that, we decided, I think it was a couple belt swings, and then one handicap accessible swing, what they call a bucket.
And then the other questions were, people were questioning if it was gonna be a dirt path or a blacktop path or whatever path it may be. That if someone is in a wheelchair, it would be accessible for them to get from the whole path. So if there was questions regarding if it should be a path or a blacktop, my vote would be, if I could vote, would be more blacktop.
Opposed to dirt. We don't really have any dirt paths out there right now.
No, we don't, but that was the questions that were being proposed to me, so I just thought I would clarify it.
Right now, the only
So
place where we still do maintain dirt paths is still down by the fishing pond until, I know that there's, if we do or don't go forward with that, that would not necessarily be easily accessible if we don't improve it. Is that correct?
The south side of the pond technically has the crushed gravel path and everything that's there that's accessible. That is right, the driveway and everything, so that meets ADA. But the future plans are to really make it accessible with a fishing pier, a fishing deck, I should say, so that somebody can get up to that water hole.
Thank you.
Sure.
So my question would be, what does this board want to do? What are the next steps you want to take on this?
So do you want to go back to the document, Jim?
Actually, I have a comment.
That was
Can you play this for the board? Matt? Maybe that? It's a 3-minute excerpt of the March 8th, 2017 presentation by PRI. It's just the comments from the board of the consensus at that time. March 8th, 2017.
You didn't give me a virus, did you?
No. I promise.
Pretty sneaky there.
Ignore that little message, just go into it, it's right there. Promise. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be this much. There you go.
Like, you know, it's a zero.
Beautiful. Can we have some volume?
I'm trying
You're not good at lip reading?
Put it to the microphone. Put DJ's microphone down to the laptop speakers. Somebody said,
Yes.
"You ready to recover?"
I'm sorry, I can't.
Sorry.
Can we just summarize
Yeah.
what's the
The gist of it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Needs at this time and in the future. When we look at present active and then now look for active, in my mind, we're looking for a shelter, a roof, for snow bank to go under. I can't see that costing $2.2 million.
They know what they,
Many years in the future,
like I said before,
the
premise
safety cost doesn't
what
mean
they're
that this
saying.
is going to cost.
So I hear a lot of
But I
people
think
from,
for different plans to
well, this is, I know it's Crystal Council, and I know he's talking about,
and my
other than that, I really
opinion,
don't know.
well, sorry, we just called you that. I would just echo, trustee Costa on the fact that.
Yeah, is there any way you can pause that for just a second? I don't know if the rest of you can understand, but I cannot understand what it's saying.
All I hear is
The
that.
billion, and I knew it was Casa with them.
So,
Okay, I'll do my best. It was not just trustee Costa, it was also trustee Berry, and it was also Mayor Yukich. And basically, the gist of it was, at that time, was there is no way this is going to be a $21 million park. And to quote you at the end of that little clip that was not quite done playing, but that's fine, I understand the technical difficulties. You said we wouldn't spend that amount of money unless we lost our minds.
and I still say it.
So I will just say, I wrote down some comments and I appreciate the amount of time that staff and Tree have put into this worksheet and the highlighted box. The numbers I came up with were just short of 5 million, and I'm not even comfortable with that. I feel that the sentiments expressed at that March 2017 meeting were that this was something that was going to take years, and it would be developed as fun and allowed. And I think one of the key aspects of passing the gas tax was to have a direct revenue source, the Parks Fund, to use towards the development of Heritage Park. What concerns me is what appears to me be a rush to spend money on Heritage Park. We have spent just shy of $8 million to date, and based on the overall estimates that Tree has provided, that totals now almost $23 million. What's being proposed now is another, based on this box, 6.5, which I'm not even comfortable with, just shy of 5. I've heard lots of descriptions about this park, which I agree with, that it is the jewel in the crown of the village of Homer Glen. And I would agree with that. What concerns me is that while we're polishing this jewel, we're ignoring the crown. And I feel there are a lot of basic infrastructure needs that are going to be coming on the horizon in perhaps, 2-3 years, maybe sooner, maybe longer, depending on circumstances that are not within our control. One of those are the 143rd Street expansion, where we are responsible for sidewalks, the ongoing Illinois American water issue, the impact on the residents. The other one is perhaps the mayor's proposed sports complex and the impact that would have on local infrastructure. I'd like to see us, being proactive on setting money aside for these very things, and I don't feel it would be responsible for us to spend $5 million, $6.5 million in the next 2 years into the park. I'd be comfortable with the active horse swing area, and maybe $1 million in the Village Green Amphitheater. I looked into the numbers that Tree proposed, and if you take out the permanent stage amphitheater for now, and took out the money for the concrete paths because I don't think they're necessary, we could do asphalt. We can bring that number down to around $1 million, somewhere in there. I think based on the comments that Mayor Yukich made at that March 17, 2017 meeting, where he talked about going line by line and scaling it back in the same way that we did with the Village Hall, still stands true. While on the one hand, I still like that philosophy, I can also see the flip side, where that may be something that has come back to bite us. I don't necessarily want to go down that exact same road, but I feel like there needs to be more of a balance. And my concern is twofold: the rush to spend this amount of money, what is 5 years' time, when originally everyone was on the same side, that there's no way we're gonna spend this much money and we're not gonna do it in such a rush. I just feel like that's been completely abandoned, and that concerns me. And I would like to see more of a balance and a proactive approach to the entire village's infrastructure needs, and not just Heritage Park. And the other aspect of this is that I don't necessarily feel there's been enough additional outreach to the community. I think the activity area as a splash pad has a much higher demand and potential usage than some of the areas that we're talking about, but because it's so expensive, I think we're shying away from that. I would have liked to have seen more input from the community, and it's frustrating for me because I did reach out, via Facebook, and I got one response, which I shared with Carrie, and hopefully you guys got a copy of that. So other than the Parks Committee's feedback, that was the only thing I got. But just based on comments and prior posts on Facebook, I think the splash pad would be a huge hit. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Well, in response to your comments, I still feel the same way I did there before, is we can't spend what we don't have. We can't bring the money down more than, we gotta be careful where we go with it, because nobody on this board wants to do something for a permanent tax. And as for some of these things that are on here right now, that's why I asked, what does this board want to do? We do have some money that we can spend on it. I would like to keep going inside of the park, because some of the things that we want to have done, they're going to be more in the next couple of years, and there'll be more in 5 years or 6 years, whatever the case is. I think right now what we should look at is we have a beautiful park that's been put in back there. There are a lot of amenities back there. As for an amphitheater in the Village Green, I'd love to see the Veterans thing go inside there. I'd love to see the original fire department that they have that's on 143rd Street that's virtually falling apart. I'd like to see that brought there and put back together. I would like to see the cul-de-sac put in, even though it's it says it's going to be 1.452, but you can find out what that really would cost, because for the amenities that we do have back there and for the events that we do have back there, it gives a lot more people an opportunity to be able to pull in here, pull back out. It'll give us 148 spots, I think it is.
051.
And then it also gives you a situation where you were just talking about handicap-wise, where they can get back to pretty much anywhere they want to go, and it gives us a lot more parking. When we had just for Halloween, we had 2,000 to 3,000 people. I know there was no locked-in count. I'll tell you what, for the amount of people that kept going past us and they never stopped, and there were always new people, there had to be at least 2,500, maybe 3,000. No one had any places to park, so now they can park in farther away. They have it to where when we have the festival here, or we have Home for Christmas. It's just so many things that I would rather have the people be able to park here than they have to be run somewhere else, and it'll help all the way around. The other stuff, and I've said it from the start, if this park, if we're all looking to get this park built out, I have no issue with it, but we also have to show some other income, because the only thing we have right now is the sales tax. There is a situation that's coming up, you mentioned the complex. We have one gentleman that wants to do the ice rink, and it will be his, and we have another gentleman that wants to do some of the baseball, soccer, lacrosse, whatever it is over there, and that will be put in right now. It at least gives us an opportunity to start pulling in some hotels, pulling in some restaurants, pulling in some other businesses that could be paying to where you get a sales tax. And with everything that we are trying to get done here and everything that we still have to do, and a lot of the money that we did put in already was for infrastructure. We've had nothing but flood problems, and now that they've done that, I'm pretty sure that we're good on flooding for East around this area, but we corrected most of it for.
Except for Trustee Gray's tent area at the Home Fest.
Wow, that is important, but that's also something that.
That would be addressed in doing the village green, though. You know, that it would be go away for a while, we'll remedy this and come back and to improve these problems.
The only
I
thing
thought that would be addressed separately.
let me finish.
But if you did,
Here's the only thing that I'm thinking. I agree with you, we have to do something for the festival because we don't want what happened last year to happen again. But what concerns me is if we do put all that stuff in, that's where the festival's gonna be every year? Or are we gonna take a look at moving this because they shouldn't have put it in front of Hill in the first place. But it was at the last minute, we're brand new at this is the first time anything has ever been done here. So I understand that nothing was intentional, but it's something that happened, we've gotta fix it. But let's find out if that's where we plan on having it, which probably would be the best place for it, because you want it close to the street, you want it close to the festival, or to the carnival. So, all I'm trying to say is, we still want to get this stuff done. I think some of the prices that are out here they are, to me, it's asking. I can't see spending, you know, it says here for the $3,750,000 for the Village Green Amphitheater. But the papers that we looked at before was anywhere from $5 to $7 million for an amphitheater. No, we're not going to do that. At least, I don't.
and we're not, we're now down to 1.5 million for the structure itself. Now, there are other line items in there that can certainly bring it just like anything in life. You can make that go as high or as low as you want to. And you know, to Trustee Holt's point about, you know, what happened in 2017, I mean, that's a typical knee-jerk reaction when you get presented with a very high bill. This is insane. There's no way we'll do that. And then, to her point, you know, eventually you come to your senses, not you come to your senses, but you realize that, you know what, this is not my business. I don't do parks and things like that, amphitheaters. And as you get more acclimated with it, you find out, well, that was maybe not necessarily a spot-on estimate, but, you know, it's in the ballpark. It's in the realm of this is what stuff costs.
Mm-hmm.
So we do these exercises that we've been doing for really, I mean, since
we started.
Right, since the park has started taking shape, where we go through them line item by line item and break it down into manageable pieces. And I know that, you know, I've talked with several of you, and we've said things like, you know, we're a board in time. There will be many more boards in time going forward, and some of those things can fall to those boards, you know. Whether or not that includes one of us or four of us or whoever, you know, going forward is a future point. But what do we want to do right now? So I think it says a lot to, you know, the wherewithal of the board that we have been able to say, it wasn't just an all or nothing. You know, let's break this down and say, how do we manage our way through it? To Trustee Holtz's other point about, you know, wanting to, the money issue about, you know, sidewalks on 143rd, we have widening of 143rd, which will impact a lot of the community once that does happen. Same thing with 151st Street when that gets widened. When 159th Street came about, we used bond money to pay for our portions of that. So it's not like that came out of a rainy day fund. No. That was money that was like, all right, we're going to go out to bond, we're going to use this. So we use that, and now we have more money in that fund still sitting there. We use it for drainage, we use it for other things. But you know, now it's just a matter of do we want to take an opportunity to use some of that right now? And once those bigger, I think we're all being cognizant that some of those bigger issues are on our horizon. But we would more than likely have to replenish that bond fund at that point. And either we continue with the same strictures that are on it currently on those certain things that we can't use it for, or we modify those. But I don't think it was ever intended that we would be paying for those bigger projects out of some rainy day fund. So.
No, and I agree with you. And as it's been so far, with the way the parks have been put together, we're not out for just spending money. It is something that when you look back there, and everyone that I've talked to, especially when we had the Christmas one, because now we gave a lot of people the opportunity to be just in that area, and I did not hear anything but praise, nothing but praise. I think the residents of this village understand that this is a board, and this is a mayor that I'll keep my word. I think that they like what they see, and they do want to see a little bit more. And it's something that I don't think is, do, put in an amphitheater? Yeah, but I'm with you. Maybe 1.5 million, we can take a look. We don't have to get, I always said it with the salt. It doesn't have to be the Taj Mahal. It has to be something that's very nice, people can enjoy it, it's usable, it makes it safe if you do have something out there, if you got a bad storm, at least it can run under that. But what we're trying to do now is keep the ball rolling on this. We still have some things that we have to do back in the active court. Swings, that would be absolutely fine. And like I said, the cul-de-sac would be important to me. But here's the big thing. No matter how you look at it, we have one, with the home rule, we have one thing right now. We have 1% or the 1 penny. Gas, no, not the gas. Gas tax is 3, but the gas will still go to the parks. So we do have money in it. There's been money in it for still a couple parks to build outside of Heritage Park. But our home rule sales tax. And I don't have an issue if we put another penny on it. When you really stop and think about it, for everything that is taken on it, it's not paid just by the people that live here. And I think that they would much rather have us put another penny on something than have to go to a park district tax or a municipal tax. It's something that doesn't have to be done. We do need to get something in here that's going to put some money back in our coffers besides the sales tax that we have right now. And then the money that we have, if you guys wanted to change it a little bit out, what the rules were 159th Street, flooding problems, and Illinois American Water. Illinois American Water, that could be 10, 15, 20 years before we finally find out what's going on with it.
Mr. Mayor, in that regard, I mean, given the pending trial and potential appeals, there's no mention of it after next year.
Well, it's still in process. We haven't gone to court.
Now, when you were trustee back in 2012 when the bonds were issued, you recall how heated that debate was about what it would be used for.
Yeah.
You're comfortable taking some of these proceeds and putting them in Heritage Park?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out from the board here.
I'm just asking you as a former trustee who voted on that issue, what's your comfort level with using that money?
159th Street is done. As for the money that we need for, I'd like to know what we still have left for drainage, because that's very important. That definitely helps a lot of residents here, so they don't get flooded basements. As for Illinois American Water, you gotta remember there's only X amount left in that we do have. So we're not gonna get foolish with it and just pee it all away. It's gonna be something that we find out from our lawyers of where they think it's gonna be, because if we lose, we still have a bigger bill to pay. If we win, it goes into a bond for the whole group.
Mayor, on the water transmission line, the consulting fees that we pay annually are considered in this particular cash flow funding forecast.
Right.
And the intent of that acquisition would be where the coalition would issue a large bond and refund all the municipalities for
Correct.
those
Well, that's what I
costs.
just did say, is that once this falls in place, but that's only if we win, not if we lose.
Well, we already won. What we're doing now is evaluation, correct?
We didn't win anything. Nobody knows what
The
this is
agency
going
won the trial, now it's evaluation.
We won the right to acquire.
to go after it, but it doesn't mean anything, because they haven't given a figure what they think it's worth. So we really haven't gotten anything. It's just, it's fluff. That's-
Right, I understand that, but I was just saying, it's only 165,000 that's even mentioned in that forecast.
The annual fee, annual consulting fee is $165,000.
For next year.
And we did look at capital, future capital costs when we came up with scenario number 2 and took those into consideration over those.
The other thing I'd just like to point out to the board is the drainage cost, the budgeting. If you look at the original spreadsheet that Mr. Suri's provided to you guys, you can see that there's actually 3 line items that does address the drainage projects. So what's already been budgeted, as well as what we anticipate we will need to budget in the coming year as well. So those have been subtracted from the unobligated amount as well. So what you have there, that $3.8 million is, those things have already come out of it. To then let you know what you have unobligated, that if you did want to change the SOP number 2, what you could play around with. The scenario number 2, as you look at it, it actually only recommends 50% of the unobligated fund balance. And that would still leave them $1.9 million of unobligated funds in there in the bond proceed account for any additional expenses or unforeseeables or whatever you would want to call them for the board as well.
I've tried to find out what the estimated cost for the sidewalks on 143rd Street or bike path would cost, and I have not been able to obtain that information yet. I am not comfortable with using any of the bond fund money. If the board preference is to move forward, I would be comfortable with doing the Village Green Amphitheater 4A minus the amphitheater stage itself, which comes in around $1 million, and then do the Veterans Hall, Veterans Memorial Village Hall phase, and then the Arctic Horse Swings. That's the only thing I'd be comfortable with, personally.
So I think, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we're looking for as a team is a consensus to move forward with just putting this design together to bid it out. This number is I mean, you have to remember the numbers that Active Core were slated for and then what they actually came in at. So that's what we're looking for, is a consensus to not spend, necessarily write a check for $6.5 million right now. What we're looking for right now is to proceed with the drawings so that we can continue to move forward and decide where we're at.
Well, that's why I want you guys to kind of get an idea of what you do want to put in there, so we're not getting the figures from something that our finance guy.
Jim, can you pull up the option D?
Yeah, this option is based on all of the feedback that we got.
Say, what was the what came out of all of our responses?
This is it.
Right here.
So what you have here, we just skipped past the previous slides that Jim just went through real quick were where we were in December with all the different options based on the feedback up to that point. And then this is a new option D that we're presenting tonight, based again on the feedback we received from the village board on the different phases that we have heard a desire to move forward on. And so we dropped these in. We haven't refined the numbers. These are the same numbers that we originally came with you. We know that there are things that can come out. We know there are ways to bring the cost down. But what we're trying to get to is authorization from the board that I can come back to you at another board meeting and actually get you to approve proposals to do the design of engineering to get them to bid specification. That's what we need here. That's the next step. And based on this, you can see that these numbers, based on the input of the majority of the consensus that we received, was $6.3 million, which then ties back into scenario number 2 and fits within the scenario 2 budget. The scenario number 2 has no MFT funds. It does not have the $300,000 in there for the neighborhood park. Instead of using 75% of the HRA sales tax estimate, we took that down to 55%, and then it includes 50% of the unobligated bond funds that are sitting in the account right now. So that would be, you would be able right now, high level. We know these numbers are not refined. We know there's ways to bring the cost down. In fact, we've even discussed doing alternates in the specifications, so that just like you did with, I'm assuming you did with the previous projects, you can pick and choose. You bid it, you have your different options, they submit their bids, and then you guys get to decide which ones of those you want in and which ones you want out. Everyone does it. And I'm assuming that happened. I wasn't here, but I'm assuming that you guys went through a similar process for Active Core, I would think. What you wanted in, what you wanted out, you did alternate bidding, and then you were able to actually get the prices to decide what you could fit within the budget.
Correct.
Proposing the exact same process.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is what
does this board look to start working on?
Right.
Because we can, I know right now, we can eliminate the amphitheater.
there's,
We can do an alternate specification for it. We can bid it, and then we can find out what that bid's going to be for it, and then you guys can decide whether that's something that the village board wants to move forward with or not.
all right, so what I would like from the board, and Ann already gave her, but I don't know, did you write down what Ann had said for her preferences? For what's, because I still would like to hear from trustee Gray, trustee Berry, trustee Rogers, trustee Gasmino, and trustee Suisse. So, Ann, you want to repeat what? Do you have anything down for Ann? Because,
You could be three
So,
days, I said the swings.
I'll email you tomorrow.
no, I need to hear it tonight, of what you're looking
The swings, the Veterans Memorial, and Village Green Phase 4A minus the amphitheater.
Okay. Trustee Gray?
Well, I did send in all of my stuff to Gary, to the village manager. And my number is, I would say it's close to probably what is on the screen, but not at necessarily all of these items. I did not have, my top 3 priorities were 4A, which is the village, the village building. Basically, it improves the face of this, the whole front of the park for me, as well as gives us the Veterans Memorial, which I think is, to me, that's one of the top priorities. But my interest, and when I look at these sheets that we've all been given, where we have a left and right side of these things, and I had said this to a couple of you guys, was that, working off the left side of the sheet, the lower priced option, while, it's good to know that, if we wanted to go back and do some of those things that are on the right side of the sheet, we'd be visiting those areas a couple times. So to me, I look at it more of an exercise. I'd much rather go to an area, finish it out the way I want to finish it out, and be done with it, and never go back there again, like in an impactful way. I can see doing the amphitheater for $1.5 million, but not necessarily putting in $200,000 worth of stage lighting or $200,000 worth of sound equipment. And I know one of those is 150 and one's 200, but so I had line item some of those items out because to me, again, I just spoke a few minutes ago about future boards. Those to me are future board things. We don't really know how an amphitheater is going to, we know what it'll look like because we have renders and everything. But we don't necessarily know how it's going to impact our community and how our community is going to accept that and want to go forward with it. So, what's the sense of putting in $200,000 worth of sound equipment today if we don't put on a concert series that rises to that level? So to me, I took those things out and I worked more off the right sides of my sheets. And I really was like, well, I'd like to concentrate on 2 or 3 things. To me, those 2 or 3 things were the village area, the village green area, almost in completion. And then obviously the swings out in active court, we want to remedy that. I really think that's kind of I think at this point, we're almost all in agreement and we should probably even stop talking about that one. It's just it's a done thing. And then to me, it was the fishing pond. Now, I had said, am I married to the fishing pond? Not necessarily. I don't fish. It's not, to me, it's more about the front of the park again. It's just like, we're improving this. When you build a brand new house, you put your money into the landscape in the backyard or the front yard first. Well, if you're on a budget, you do the front yard because that's the face that goes to the public. So, but again, my number was closer down by $7 million, but I was line iteming some of those things out. So what I really wanted to ask was, when you had gone through some of these things, did you guys take into consideration any of those line items that were?
Yeah, we did the sound and the lights. We had, I think that was maybe today we had a discussion about.
Is that reflected in D? Because D still shows for the amphitheater 3.715, which is exactly what's on the left side of the
No, it did. We did not have time for Jim to go back and line item every single one of the phases. So what you have here is the same numbers you had on December 11th. We did discuss. We thank you for submitting yours. Everyone's looked at it. We shared it, but we didn't have time to go back because I was literally still getting feedback as of last week. So these numbers are the same original numbers, but I think the point that you're making, Trustee Gray, is that we know that this number is high to start with. We know that this 6.3 number that you have in here, and the reason why you don't see the pond in there is because, with all due respect, no one else mentioned the pond. so you're not seeing whatever, you're all seeing a part of your feedback, and what we were trying to do was wrap our arms around that and come up with a good consensus of how we felt, everyone felt that they were being heard.
But we don't see that reflected here. We don't see
it is though, and that's it. Like the sound point, that is in column B. those things are in column B, so those are not.
So it's taken out of option B.
Correct. So, and maybe I can just go through that real quick. So what we tried to do as part of the design team was take into account all the feedback that we got from board members, from the community, through the whole workshop process, from our committee of the wholes. We took this into account as we got to what I think is our recommendation here. So here's kind of what I think we heard. No tax increase, right? It's not in here, right? We said, take that out, no tax increase at all. I don't think anybody's ever supportive of it. Don't use 75% of the sales tax. To Carrie's point, we dropped that down to 55%. No MFT funds. You see several scenarios in which new dollars, that $420,000 in MFT funds, those are new revenue dollars for us this year, right? So that is a brand new revenue source, not source for us, but that's brand new revenue. We're not including that in our recommendation. We're saying take those MFT dollars, those new dollars, keep growing for our infrastructure and our roads, and put that away. Don't use this on the park, right? That was taken into account on that. Don't use the neighborhood park money that we have in the budget, the $300,000, right? I don't think I've ever supported putting that towards Heritage Park, but that was part of that feedback. It's not in our recommendation. Existing bond proceeds versus borrowing, right? And that's why we went and looked at the existing bonds, dollars we have in our bank. The important point here, before I talk about how we got to the spending side of it, the important part here is that everything we're talking about for this next phase is dollars we have, right? And still, in my opinion, being conservative in how they're used, because we're not going and rating all of the unallocated bonds. We're saying 50%. That has no allocation as we sit here today and been sitting there for a good number of years now. So that's, in my world, that's conservative. I understand some of the sensitivities because of some of the commitments when it was passed in 2012. On that topic, I think we've said as a committee, we would recommend going to a public meeting before we went and just at a board meeting, which we have the right to do, to your point, just change an SOP and say, we've just changed our mind on how we think we want to spend those dollars. We recommend a public meeting before we ever did that, understanding the sensitivities of the commitments that were made
7 years ago.
Before we run it.
That's actually what I said.
Right? And so when I get just now to look at the spending side, we also try to do the same thing on this. Through the process, through the meetings, through the feedback from the boards and community, we went back and that's when we first separated this into column A and column B, right? What do we all, and we were all part of these discussions, what do we all think we need, if we're going to do that phase? What are the things we think we can wait into the future? Because we're not trying to just spend dollars just blindly and just because we like to spend money. What do we need if we're going to do it now? What are we going to do in the future and we think we can hold off? To your point on the amphitheater, sound, things like that, we've agreed, the design team and our recommendation is leave that for a future time. The type of acts that we would attract in the near term would be those that bring their own equipment. So there's an argument to spend that money and include it. If you're going to do it now. We've said, no, that's something we think we can wait into the future, and let's see if we need that. We're not sure we need that, and that could be 10 years from now. But in the meantime, let's make sure that the conduit and everything is run. Let's not be short-sighted when we go and build a structure. There's forethought into the conduit and everything, so one day you could pull those lines and do those things if you wanted to, without, going into the structure. So how we got to option D, I think was also taken into account everybody's views here. I will say that in our initial conversations as a team, the Veterans Memorial was probably a second phase after this one. Your feedback on that topic, I think when we heard that feedback, we all looked at each other and went, it makes perfect sense. When you're bringing large earth-moving equipment out here to grade and do village green and to do the amphitheater and other areas, yeah, we probably should just do that now. My fear, and just a side part, but my fear with, hey, let's do a little bit now, let's do a little bit, let's do a little bit then, let's do a little bit then. You're going to have a park under construction for every year for the next 10 years, right? And you're gonna be going back into areas that you already done, but now you're bringing construction equipment back in, and that one costs more. Just in every year you push something off, there's 5 or 6% construction cost increase, so it costs more. But two, you have a park constantly under construction. So part of our view on this was, what are those things that kind of get this park, not with all, I look at it as like, it's not bare bones by any means, because when you look at Active Core, it's a beautiful amenity that every town around us has sent people to come and use and look and take notes as a model for the park districts around us, which I think we should all be really proud of. So it's not bare bones, but when we look at sort of the fancier options, we've tried to be prudent and say, okay, no, I don't think we need to do those. But when you talk about the Veterans Memorial, you talk about some of the grading. Open play was an area that we said, I'm not sure we need that right now, right? But again, if you're bringing if you're going to bring the equipment out here to grade, well, take that one as an example. Column A is $123,000. That's basically grade, seed, flatten it out while you got the equipment out here. Column B, which we're not recommending, is an additional $250,000 in some of those options, right? So that's example one, I think, on line item one. Sled hill. We've talked at length about the sled hill. You know, our recommendation for stairs and up and down and dual use, help kids get up and down that hill in the winter and in the summer. You can exercise up and down the stairs. I think we said collectively, no, that's something that, not saying don't design it, but right now, we think that's not something, when we prioritize dollars, we want to include. We trimmed that down to say, and this was part of the discussion, while we're out there, and if we're going to do the cul-de-sac, and I'll get to that, but if we're going to do the cul-de-sac, it's probably a good time to just run a light up on top of the hill, because as we've all talked about, it gets dark at 4 o'clock in the winter, which is when you're sledding. So maybe that's the time to figure out and do that utility work and get a light up there. So in that one, in area 3A, the $109,000 is that sort of bare bones option. What we didn't recommend was the $532,000 in those, again, sort of options. When we go to the Village Hall on 151st, same thing. We tried to, Veterans Memorial is included in there. This would, in combo with the Village Green, finish this project from here out to the amphitheater and be done. And to your point, to clean up around the building, I think we don't necessarily want to touch the streetscape on 151st, knowing that that project's coming in a few years. That's probably a better time. Why spend money now and then have it potentially torn up, way down the front. But from the back out, let's do it while we have the equipment. And that is column A, $745,000. What is not included in some of the options is another $400,000. The amphitheater, same thing. If you look in the column B, you see the PA system. You see some of the when you see stage sound, column A is just the conduit, right? We've said no, we don't need the sound now. We get it. We agree from the feedback, and that's why you get to the column that we have. And what we're leaving for potentially later is $2.4 million in some of the additional options. The activity area is another one where we've said, and to the point of the splash pad, this is the part that's kind of difficult for me because I have a young family, right? So when I look at a park, I view it from our use. My family would love to see a splash pad, there's no doubt about it. But I also have to be cognizant that what we've already done out here is geared towards, in large part, active younger families. Active Core is geared towards that. So my kids have a ninja course or have, you know, tennis courts or any number of things out there. What we don't have, and why I wouldn't be supportive today of shifting from some of the passive recreation that we're talking about to a splash pad, is it would be an amenity, again, for the same sort of resident that we just spent the last money on. And so I'm trying to think about those that are 55 and over and some of that passive recreation, the Veterans Memorial, the amphitheater, so that if we can get through this next phase, there is truly something here for everybody of every age. So I'd love to see a splash pad. Cost effective, when you look at the dollars that would cost and some of the maintenance and upkeep and all those things, is why I've taken it off the list, even though my kids, you'd probably disagree with me. So on the activity area where that would be, we've said, again, while you have the earth moving equipment, just grade it, seed it. So in the future, if we want to do, that's $47,000. What's left on the table there, that is in column B that we're not recommending, is 2.6 million, right? So I'd say that's another example where we've taken the feedback and said, let's do what is cost effective while we've got the equipment out there and leave everything else for the future. Sled Hill cul-de-sac. Now I know this one, we've talked about, this has been a priority, not a priority. We've gone back and forth on this. As we've all talked about, I think there's a couple reasons to do this now. And in retrospect, I think it would have been better off if we would have done it as part of the ring road and just done it, right? So we're already kind of one step behind and already doing one of those. If we would have done it on the front end, there probably would have been some cost savings. Now we're going to do it after the fact, but fine. It gives us, we were here for the Homer for the Holidays, right? When we blocked off that ring road, this is like one of those real world things that I had to see. I could look at these maps forever and still not grasp it. But I'm pulling in for Homer for the Holidays with my family. We blocked off the ring road because we had the tent set up and everything. On the west side, you have this parking lot where, hey, if you get to the end and spots are taken, you can feed, make your way around, come back around, and back out. Well, if you came in the east entrance, which is what we did, we got a spot. But once the spots were full, you're driving by and you don't know there's no more spots. You get to the blockade, and I can't tell you how many people were having to make three-point turns while everybody else were waiting to make their three-point turn to get back out. A side benefit, in addition to access to the sled hill, would be we need more parking spaces. That's been clear through what I think has been a year of events that surpassed what any of us envisioned in year one. So we need more parking, whether it's for Homer Fest or Homer for the Holidays or the trunk or treat, whatever it may be. From a practical standpoint, it gives us that traffic flow to get people back out when we block off for those big events. And as I said, just the access to this level. We've talked about that. We haven't had much snow this winter, but when we get snow, families right now are going to have to park on the ring road and make their way through active core, up the hill, use the hill, and then traipse back through the snow to get back to their cars. And that's okay, right? But the intent was to give access where you can pull up your car. And I know what we do from time to time is we sit in the car while the kids sled and stay warm, right? I can't do that right now. And that's a minor thing. The more practical thing is about the additional parking and the flow of
circulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got.
That's why we included that.
Just hearing you say that right now, that's the first time that's dawned on me, that, you know, like you said, if we block off where active core is because of tents and whatnot in the street, that you do have two paths where you can circulate traffic. I know that that's been a huge issue for the road commissioner too, because he's generally doing parking and logistics for us. And he said the same thing, you know, you get these people who are, you know, they're dead ending right there. So it didn't even dawn on me though that you were right at the cul-de-sac, because I was not a big fan of the cul-de-sac, I can tell you. It didn't serve much purpose for me. I do see a purpose for it in those regards if we're going to continue to use that center section of the road and close it off.
You also had the fire department worried about because you blocked it completely off. It's not like you can dismantle it in a few minutes. And then they still hit some of the vendors that were outside too. So yeah.
I didn't even see that use of that cul-de-sac.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. This is where I'm still limited in this, right? All of us have regular lives where we do our own professions. Most of them are not design architect and things. So we're all learning as we go. But I can look at this map, and we all have for years, and I never thought about that until the one day I pulled in for Home the Holidays and watched 100 people make three-point turns and slow traffic for the entire thing. And then the final one, active core, is the swings, right? No brainer. What I would say that, just a reminder that when we first did active core, we had an active discussion about swings. We thought that may be in a future phase, that may be off as part of the activity area. There were many reasons why I think we all agreed that we don't need them. I think we all agreed that was a mistake. And that was one of those real world things that the first day you're out there at the opening, you think like a mom with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and while the 5-year-old is on the nature play, the 2-year-old or the 1-year-old is likely to be in the swing, and we don't have it there. So that one that I think is one obviously we all agree with. That's how we got to the 6.3 million, right? And it's leaving a lot of these options on the table for the future down the road, right? And so when we bring that back to the funding of it, I think that, as I said in the beginning, that's what we did. We took we tried to take everybody's input into account. No tax increase. Don't use 75% of sales tax. No MFT funds. Don't use the neighborhood park money. We did all that. None of that's in there. So it's been an honest effort, and I appreciate everybody's input because that's how this process works best. And that all is built into what you see before you tonight on the spend side and on the revenue side. And I would simply say, and we've talked about this in the past, from a basic business standpoint, if we have the dollars in, not in our access to the dollars, budgeted, otherwise, without tapping any new resources or revenue or tax hikes or bonding out, borrowing anything, right? We fund this phase. And if we did the things that you see before you, we think this park is really pretty set for a number of years, and the future boards and the future residents can decide on the option side of it if the use warrants those expenditures. But that gets this park in the next 2 years pretty much construction done, right? And usable for all age groups, and truly the crown jewel of the town. And then, and with that, we're still, as we talk about other projects in town and other priorities, because I agree, we are still planning for that. That is taking that MFT money and putting it aside and letting that fund grow for those projects. That is only using 55% of our sales tax and leaving the rest of that untouched. In the bond, using half of that and leaving still $2 million that we have no plans for right now, still sitting there. And that's the thing that I think at times when I hear, I think, a debate like we're big spenders, it's the most frustrating thing to me because we're talking about a town that doesn't levy a property tax. No town around us can say that. We have zero debt, right? No town around us can say that. We have what I would say, if not some of the lowest, but certainly competitive tax rates of any town around us in general. And as I've said many times before, everything we're talking about, the towns around us all have a separate line item on their tax bill in addition to their village, which is a park district, which we've said, hey, it's more efficient for us to play that role than to have another level of government with another line item on a tax bill. So to me, we're the model of efficient, effective government. And for us to talk like we're big spenders and this is so conservative in my world that I'd love to hear us all talking about how great this is and how great the money's been managed in this town. And I think we've been lucky, right? This project, which is probably the biggest project this town may ever do from a public, development project, to be at a time where we paid off our debt, we're debt-free, we got access to that sales tax line that was paying off debt. You're in the middle of a good economy, right? So our sales tax dollars over the last several years have done well. We've had a surplus on an annual basis of $700,000 and $500,000, right? So over the last 2 years, we've had $1.2 million in an annual surplus, right? And if we take this into pieces while we have the dollars sitting in our bank account, unallocated for anything else at this point, and we still keep reserves in those funds. And we go do this, not only is it the prudent business decision, it is cost savings as opposed to doing this over the next 10 years, and you take that 5% a year in additional construction cost and do that out over time. And it's not only, I think, gets this project mostly completed for what we've all talked about, but also is it good, if it was a business, I can't imagine if we had the money in our bank. We don't have to borrow, we don't have to tax, and we still keep reserves. If we've said this is what we want to do, and this, with this list you see in front of you, is what we've all said as a consensus we want to do, then now's the time to do it, because putting it off in the future, you don't know what the economy's going to do. You don't know any of those things. Now's the time we know, and we're not draining our bank account. It's not even with this.
I have one more question for you. While you're, like, my initial priorities were not, it did not have the cul-de-sac in there. I can see some value and some merit in that now that you've explained that. But explain to me then why, that was also why, when I was looking at the funding portion of it, I was like, well, let's take the MFT out, because none of this applied, in my, priority list, none of it really applied to the MFT fund, so that was why I backed it out. But now that you've got cul-de-sac in there, and that does qualify for using, right, because it's a dedicated road, so it qualifies to use MFT. Why wouldn't we use at least some of the MFT to offset some of it?
That's a great question, one that we talked about. We had this exact discussion, right? We said, okay, well, if we got MFT and we're going to do the cul-de-sac, we used MFT for the ring road, why not use it for the cul-de-sac? We thought it was more prudent for a couple of reasons. One, Jim can speak to it, but it changes the contracting or bidding of that kind of separate. You got to treat MFT separate from everything else. And two, if we don't need to use it, let's let that fund grow. Right, what I'd simply say is, you got $420,000 projected in new revenue for us. We're not rushing to spend it. We're saying, put it away. We've got a $500,000 surplus this year. We're not sweeping that and say, throw it in here. That's not in this either. So right there, you're at $900,000 that is sort of new money for us. We're still not even touching that. That's how conservative I believe this is. And as I said, from a business decision standpoint, if it was my dollars in my business, before I ever thought about bonding out. When I know there, and as I said, I know there's sensitivity on the existing bond proceeds. I look at it like if you have a pile of money in a savings account and you told your wife you have an agreement you're not going to spend that, right? We agree we're not going to touch that. Okay, fine. Well, let's go get a second mortgage. Right? Let's go pay interest on a second mortgage because we've just said we're not going to touch that money. It's not a prudent business decision in my opinion, right? And I do think that requires public meetings to explain why we were changing our mind, may change that. But that's to me the most sensitive one. And even on that, I just think from a when you look at it from that standpoint, you got money you can spend that's sitting in the account that you've said you can't touch. There's no, it's just the operating procedure for us and a vote. I think it's prudent. So I know I've talked a long time, but I think it's important because the design teams put a lot of effort into this and tried to take everyone's view into this, including Trustee Holtz, who I think your big things from what I was told was no tax increase. Don't use 75% of sales tax revenue. I'm more comfortable with 50. We're at 55. Against using MFT funds. We are not using MFT funds. And against using the small park funds, we're not using those funds either. And so I think we've tried our best to take everybody's diverse opinions into it and come up with what is our best recommendation for all those reasons.
All right, well, we're still going to, we still got a couple parts that we are looking at, so eventually it will be spent. It's not going to be spent on the core, on Heritage. No, the only thing that I'm not getting here is the grant total $6,333,452, and that's just projected. That doesn't mean that's what the cost is.
Right, I mean, remember the number that Active Core started at, and we came in, significantly under budget. So this is, like you said, the tweaking, and you know, the desire of putting out, do you want granite countertops or do you want white countertops? So this is kind of like,
But all right, but with that being said, even if it came down to $4 million, what money we do have available right now is what was left over from the bond. And we still have to keep some in there for the flooding. As for American Water, I can look into that. Once it is completely done, and if we do win, it floats over to a bond that all 5 villages pay. So that would be, now the money's free. You know, you don't have anything against it. As for 159th Street, are we done paying for that, or do we still have to?
No, we still owe, about $160,000. Our total?
Cover all of infrastructure, you know, the grass and.
Yeah, that's it. So, and we may not get billed for another couple of years, because IDOT is very slow in billing the construction part of state jobs.
But I still don't want to spend forward either.
But that would still be available.
Right, so if that's the case, we would have to figure out what do we still have left from 159th Street? Because, you know, we didn't set a specific number on any one of them. And I think we have fulfilled what we promised in the first place. Nothing was spent other than the 3 things that were on it. And like I said, if it's 159th Street is done now, except for the $167,000, okay, then that kind of frees that up. If we'll confirm Illinois American Water with the lawyers and with the rest of the group to see where we're at with that.
Actually, the number in there, Ms. Ray, you were on vacation when we had our last water agency meeting. So I went to that meeting, and that number in here is the number that our attorneys gave us. That's our share. So that's $165,000 that we subtracted from the bond proceeds is what they anticipate the Homer Glen will have to spend this coming year as we go to trial, and we anticipate going to trial this spring. This spring. Yeah.
It's coming up.
Yeah, so this is, we subtracted that, so that's been addressed.
We still have $1.9 million in that fund, even after you.
Even after I vouched out,
Right.
yeah.
There's still, if we only use half of the proceeds that are sitting in there, we'd still have 1.9 in there. So if we got next 165 a year for the next 5 years, we'd still be able to cover that, as well as like John just said about if we owe, you know, $150,000, $160,000 for 159. So I think you're right to ask for, you know, let's firm out those numbers, and let's take worst case scenario on IEW that we go to trial in June and it just gets continued forever, you know.
And that's what it could. So the next year, you're still gonna have money coming out because you still have lawyers representing you.
Right. But we can still have enough money in there. 1.9 still has the balance in that fund to take us for, you know, if that were the only thing hitting that account, you know, we'd still be.
All right, but then we still have to check and see what we're looking at for any kind of flooding problem.
Right, and they've got 2 years projected out there, right?
Yeah, so we have, you can see under, in the spreadsheet, we have $3 million basically already accounted for drainage projects moving forward. So that's already been deducted as well.
It's 300,000, right, not 3 million?
No, there's 2.265 million and another 760,000. There's 2 line items there.
And that's for the next 2 years,
Yeah.
right? Which is what we're saying, we would also give the time that we're doing the spend on this. And when we're done spending this over the next 2 years, all of that other sales tax dollars gets freed up.
Correct.
Right, so that does take us into the next
But
year.
I'm looking forward because really nobody knows what's gonna happen.
Right.
So I mean, I just wanna.
It's going to take us a while to spend $3 million on drainage projects.
We don't know what's going to happen. You're right. And we are being prudent to Trustee Gurian's point. You know, we're leaving 1.9 million in there. We're not touching MFT. We're not raising taxes. You know, most of us are saying, you know, the tax rate, you know, great, we're not raising taxes. Taxes, to me, we should not be raising just to build up a reserve or something. You know, if we have an emergency and we need to do those things, then obviously we'll consider that. But we're taking all of that out of there, and we're still leaving 1.9 million in this one particular fund. not even taking into account, like Trustee Buren said, really the 420 in MFT, we're anticipating $500,000, possibly more in, you know, excess funds that we're not even, we've got a wall full of plaques now in the back that we see where we've come in, our accounting has always been so stellar, we're always in a surplus mode. So, you know, again, I'm okay with going forward. I want to make progress. I want to continue to move this thing forward. I don't want to live in fear of what may come. Things are going to come. Things don't come, things do come. We're living in one of the longest periods of expansion right now. And yes, it could come to an end, but we can't live in fear when it will end. We never would be looking out at the park we're sitting on right now. I mean, we have to do some things for the residents. They have asked us.
I agree 100%. We just have to make sure that we've got backup money coming in.
Yeah.
So, Brian, in this case, you're looking to get the open place, Sled Hill, Village Hall, Veterans Memorial, Village Green and Amphitheater, Activity Area, Cul-de-sac Road, Active Course Ways, to, let's get what it's really gonna cost us.
Yeah, Jim can speak to that, but what we're not trying to get consensus on today is, let's go to bid on all of this, right? That's not tonight.
Okay.
Tonight is, let's keep moving. From December 12th to today has been 6 weeks on us, right? If we would have had direction December 12th, I know I wasn't at that meeting, but if we would have had direction December 12th, we'd be 6 weeks ahead of where we are today. Let's not do that. Again, let's get consensus. All right, can we move forward?
Well, all right, but then again, it comes back to, unless I'm just misunderstanding something, is what are we trying to go forward with?
Sure.
Do you want me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Or, well, I need consensus tonight, as a village manager, I need consensus tonight from the collective board that you are comfortable with proceeding towards option D for professional engineering plans to be drawn up, specifications done, that will get us to the point where when those plans are completed, we will have bid documents available to go out to bid. That is all I'm asking for tonight.
What? You're gonna have bid documents
Option
for
D.
everything that's up there?
Yeah.
I'd like to add too, though, that I know the hour's late and a lot of the talking's been done by Brian and I, but we haven't even heard from that half of the diet yet. And I am not going to consensus until we hear from pretty much everybody, so.
Well, I mean, I think Brian speaks for both of us because we've sat in numerous meetings and these are all of the things that we've gone through and we were definitely took whoever gave us the feedback, we look at that, we put it together, this is what the majority of the board wanted, and this is the most conservative plan that we felt was the best. I mean, I think it's important that we continue to move forward with the park because we saw the demand. You know, nobody could have anticipated the demand that we have in the park, and we had so many other things planned for it coming up, that we said the movies in the parks and the market, Glen, which we really didn't talk about, but the market, possibly doing a couple market days out there. There's just a lot, and this is a gathering place, so to continue moving forward and showing the progress that we're doing, I think this is the best option, is to go with scenario 2.
Sharon, what do you think? And then I'll come back to you.
Sure, I agree, options good.
I just hear
Ladies first. So, option D, I think, I mean, it has a little bit of, you know, every of the elements that I think would make up a great park. Like Trustee Buren stated, you know, it's better to get all this out of the way than supposed to bring in a bunch of heavy equipment, you know, 5 years from now and destroying everything. So you know, maybe some of this we could tweak a little bit, a few of the numbers, right? That amphitheater, that type of thing. And once again, this is just quoting, it's nothing set in stone, so I mean, I'm okay with it.
Sure.
No, I think all the trustees brought up great points, so I don't want to say it again. But I agree, you know, I think we should go forward and like, we could tweak it a little bit after we see some of the plans. So I'm going to talk about the smaller things because I'm a co-chair on the environment committee. And when I look at Village Hall area and when I look at the Village Green, there's large amounts of money put in here, like $8,000, $20,000 for tree removal. And that really gets, you know,
I like to see as much out there preserved, because that's what a park is supposed to be. But like $8,000 for the village hall area, $20,000 for tree removal on the village green and amphitheater. I mean, that's, you know, that's one of the things that bothers me. Plus, I agree with cul-de-sac road, because we probably do need more parking. I want to know how much interference that's going to cause with the 319 grant. You know,
Should it cost anything?
because that's,
As of right now, HR Green feels that it's not gonna be an issue with the 319 grant, but we threw in the $30,000 allowance just for transplanting seeds and everything, just to make sure that if we're taking something out, he thinks there's enough right of way there just for that additional parking that the board requested of the design. So he thinks he can align it and still be in with that area and not have to mess with it. But
Well, let's make sure.
yeah, that is, a lot of these things are gonna be in the design process.
Or the state of Illinois will sign off on it?
I don't know what HR Green still, once we
Well,
align it.
that's what we have to find out.
Oh, yeah. Again, a lot of these things is gonna be happening during the design process where we're gonna go ask the questions and come back and provide feedback and say, here's our two choices. Take out the parking or pay $20-something thousand in seed restoration.
and then
Right? So,
Right.
those are all part of it.
I don't want to see that as a precedence where we do something else in the future. Oh, let's knock into that area again. So that was my concern. But I agree, though, you know, let's see how we can tweak this a little more and go forward and see what's the next phase of the information on this.
And then ballpark, what's this engineering gonna run us?
Gary's asked me to work those numbers out. All our engineers right now, we're in a flux. The numbers we were actually coming up with and they were working on was just Village Green, Amphitheater, and Active Core. So they're in the cul-de-sac.
So I've directed Jim, based upon the decision tonight of the village board, that he's to go back and get us that number in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so you'll have a number. The biggest thing that's coming out of tonight's workshop is the board is comfortable with these. I can go back to the consultants and say, this is the numbers that you're going to assign to for engineering. And then come back in 2 weeks for approval.
Yeah. In addition, in terms of timing, why don't you address timing a little bit as well, Jim?
Again, I know we have this conversation every year, but we always say ideally you want to be out in the winter, right? Get best pricing, be out as early as we can. With this phase, so we're kind of not hurting Homer Fest this summer. And then we're saying this is going to be a fall letting, so we can get some of the contractors that are done with their summer construction, and they may do fall work. So we're trying to pick up those contractors and kind of cater to that. And we know that'll go into fall and into spring and try to finish before the next Homer Fest. So we're trying to make those things work. So right now, if we say 4 to 5 months, we're trying to be out to bid by the end of design by end of summer, July, August. Try to be out and then still get that fall construction guys sweeping in there. So that is the goal as of right now too.
So your total design time is probably around, 5 or 6 months then, right?
Right. We're trying to do it 4 to 5. And quite honestly, a lot of that, I know we can do it quicker like we did with the Active Core, but our goal is to really sit down, and there was discussion last time about how quickly the process went. So we don't want to do this process quick this time. We want to sit down with the whole board, have the workshops, discuss all those options with the board, and then have that feedback as we're going through. So there is a design process time and meeting time with the entire board.
So you want to be out to bid by early fall, let's say late summer, early fall. You want to try to get a contract let, and they can start taking a look at things by early fall into the middle of the fall. Work until the frost, pick it back up next April, let's say, and work all summer. So Homer Fest again, and again, I know this doesn't revolve around Homer Fest, you're the one who brought it up, so I'm going to go with that. But Homer Fest would be out of there next year, and again, they could work all the way into the fall, into the frost, and pick it up again in the spring, and finish it up possibly 2022.
I'm not making any promises.
No, I was telling my committee to anticipate being out of that space in 2 years.
So if this works out well, and if we can get direction and move forward and get bids and do all this stuff, in our mind, when we talk to the engineers and everything, is with the scope that is limited, that you guys are on these options here, that the mass grading, the fine grading and everything would happen in fall, where you can get sod down, right? Our goal again this year is sod, not seed, so we're not messing with that, so you can get in there quicker.
It's not just in the village green area. Not in the other areas where you'd be touching and just grading.
Green and amphitheater, so cul-de-sac would just be seed, right? Nobody playing football or anything like that right next to the cul-de-sac. So that goal is to be there, and we're envisioning at that same time, once they're done mass grading, village green and amphitheater, they're going over to kind of fix the cul-de-sac, get that going while they're pouring concrete and asphalt. They're staging themselves around the entire site and saying, I can pour the active core swings, if we don't do that earlier. I can do the cul-de-sac, I can run all the lights and the power while we're there. The only thing that would be really left for the next year is the amphitheater, the actual building. Because we know we're doing a combination of steel and wood, and some of those things have long lead items as we learn from the active core. So we're like, by the time those get let and designed and shop drawing and fabricated, you're gonna be in the winter. So if we have a warm winter, we may be able to get it done. But if we can get all the seating areas, lawn areas established, that's a pretty good chance then for Homerfest of next year that you can use that area. I'm not breaking any promises, on the record.
Of 2021?
Sure.
2022, right, yeah.
No,
2021
2021.
is what he said.
2021.
You're talking about the
We would never be out of
be built to 2021.
We are saying we're not starting construction this fall of 2020.
Right, but if you were to be done by 2021, by Homerfest June 2021, that means Homerfest would never be impacted.
Correct.
Good luck with
Not making it. Again, if everything works out with the grading, I've talked to the engineer. If you were to said, we did, if we did all the farmer's market pads, all the lights on the green, all that other stuff, that would, I couldn't promise you.
It's not very trusty sweets.
Since the green is simpler now, it's just a top, it's grading, it's side, and sidewalks around it, it's relatively simple.
I have a question, who's gonna sprinkle all this sod? Where's this water gonna come from? God.
That is gonna be a design decision that we're gonna have to talk about, because if on a drought day, do you want your amphitheater looking dry or greeny?
Well, remember, we were also going to repair the well that we have, so we use that for water for the entire park.
Oh, the well.
Actually,
We don't water
we have
at
a well.
We have a well. So we always anticipated, we have that, John Robinson has that plan to fix the groundwater well and use it for irrigation.
All right.
Mayor, before we finish up, I'd just like to say thank you to, I know Brian and Beth spent a lot of time on this, and Jim and the rest of the committee. I mean, it was a lot of work. I know it was hard for me to get through some of these things because the number was overwhelming, the line items were dizzying and stuff, so I'm glad to see that a lot of this was reflected in there. Some might yes, some might no. It's a win, it's a lose. It's all a win at the end of the day, though. So I'm glad to see that we can't come into a number that, I know not all of us can coalesce around that number, but it's hard work and it's much appreciated. So
Thank you. The bulk of that work is done by staff. So, I mean, and you know that. So staff has been phenomenal on this too. And on your fishing platform that I think we all want to see one day, I didn't touch that, but I think our thought on that was stocked, not fishable for a few years. We can do that project and budget for that any fiscal year. So it's not that we dismiss that. It's not a priority because you can't fish it right now anyways for the next couple of years.
Okay. Is there any old business?
Is that official? You tell me, is that official direction to move with option D and get you pricing for next, in 2 weeks? D. D up on the street. D as in dog. That's up on the street.
Well, Christine, could you take roll? There's
Just draw a vote. Raise a hand.
One person.
I'm good.
All right, thank you for that, so we can get working on that. I just want to add one last thing. With this direction, if you proceed, go forward with all the, at the end of the day, you're going to have better circulation right in the cul-de-sac. But if you really think about it, you're going to have one more great community gathering space with your veterans memorial in the back of Village Green. You're gonna have another one with the village green itself that you can expand on and grow, because that'll be the one that you're gonna have to actually work on. And then you're also gonna have a third one, which is gonna be the amphitheater that you can host events. So I think you're really checking off the boxes on a lot of these events that are gonna be here in the site, so. Just wanted to end it on a positive note of what you could possibly do at the end.
All right, thank you. All right, well, I want to know what it's going to cost us for this too. And you know I'm going to put.
I know.
When are you moving home?
I'm here now, open up, get me a room here.
All right, is there any old business? Is there any new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.